Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. Hello to so many friends out there. Thank you all for being here. And welcome. Thank you to everyone joining us online as well. We very much appreciate that. My name is Hillary Parker. I'm the CEO of Habitat for Humanity of Dane County. And we are so thrilled that all of you are here to talk about one of our most pressing issues. We have to get more safe, accessible, affordable housing built in Dane County. And today we're going to collaborate together to do that. I invite you to stay for our chat afterwards and make some connections. I would love to meet every single one of you I haven't already met. So thank you again for being here. So let me tell you a little bit about Habitat Dane. Since 1987, we've worked with our volunteers, our sponsors, our families to build more than 350 homes here in Dane County. We've built all over the county. And this event, Home is the Key, is Habitat for Humanity's annual national awareness and fundraising campaign. This event calls attention to the need for affordable housing and to help just open the door to equitable homeownership across the United States. And we're proud to be one of 5 activation spots highlighted by International. We would like to thank Habitat's corporate partners. We have American Family Insurance here in Dane, Richard, At Home, Lowe's, and Astound, so thank you very much. They have all been joining the campaign and provided both financial and volunteer support all throughout April. And of course, that's right, James, thank you. Volunteer of the Year 2024, James? 23? Anyway, thank you. So we want to also make you aware that April is National Fair Housing Month, and we could not be more proud to partner with True Stage, who has done an amazing job hosting this event. Thank you, True Stage. Now, many of us here today were fortunate enough to have a safe, stable, and affordable home to grow up in. Home is the key to connection, well-being, and stability. But too many families across the United States are locked out of this opportunity. Through our Home is the Key campaign, we're opening doors. And we are very pleased to open a door for our Lieutenant Governor, Sara Rodriguez, who is joining us today. As a nurse, she's seen the impact that housing has on families, and both good and ill, she has developed a passion for home ownership. And she is going to say a few words. Come on up. While she's coming up, I want to make you aware that we are going to use something called Slido for Q&A today. We're not going to pass the mic. We're going to ask you to, if you would like to ask a question, go ahead and use the QR code on your table or on the screen. Oh, wow, it's really big on that one too. Thanks, Kurt. This is why he moderates. So you can log in, enter the code, and enter your questions. This allows those of us viewing, online to join as well. So, Lieutenant Governor.
Go LG.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you, Hillary, for that introduction and for all of you being here today this morning. It is a pleasure to join you today as we discuss the affordable housing crisis and highlight ways that we can work together to make home ownership more accessible. As we all know here, housing is not a privilege, but a human need. And I have had the wonderful opportunity to visit multiple Habitat for Humanity chapters around our state and have seen and heard the passion that so many individuals in this organization have. And in my previous life, prior to being an elected official, I did actually pick up a hammer and volunteered with my Waukesha County Habitat for Humanity. So the work that is done by Habitat for Humanity here in Dane County is evident in and around Madison, as well as through events such as this one that highlight the need for affordable housing. And I was just saying this at my table. I said, there are 2 things that I hear about no matter where I go, whether it's urban, suburban, rural, tribal land. The first one is childcare. and the second one is housing, always. So I hear directly from families how difficult it is to be able to find safe and affordable housing. And as Lieutenant Governor, I serve as the chair on the Interagency Council on Homelessness, and I am able, again, to see firsthand how the need for affordable housing is just critical. And we know that it can change a person's life. So I'm a nurse, and I often talk about the social determinants of health. The medicine we give people, the procedures that we do, it's just a small fraction of how healthy we are. It's the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food on our table, and whether or not we have a roof over our head. And I often think about those health struggles that unhoused individuals may face because of a lack of stability and safety. A safe place to sleep at night can change not only our physical health, but greatly improve our mental health as well. Housing instability can increase stress, anxiety, other mental health symptoms, and about 1 in 5 people experiencing homelessness today have a serious mental health condition. There is such a need for more affordable housing in our state, and it's becoming more urgent by the day. And I hope today's discussion can provide insight and solutions for Dane County. And this is personal for me as well. When I first had my children, my son is now 18 years old. Somehow he's an adult. I don't know. He can't take the cups from his room to the kitchen, but somehow he's a grown person. When he was first born, we were in an apartment. And I was only able to buy my first home with assistance, down payment assistance, to be able to do that. And so it is a real struggle for everybody out there, and everybody should have the opportunity that my family did. So thank you for the work that you are doing. Have a great discussion.
Fantastic, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Now I'd like to introduce Kurt Paulsen. He is our University of Wisconsin Professor of Urban and Regional Planning. He's also Wisconsin's housing guru. Now, he is not going to love that I told you that, because he specifically asked that the introduction not be too glowing because he's a Midwesterner and it will make him blush. It's safe to say you are in very good hands with Kurt. Your panel, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go get him.
All right, well, good morning. Oh, there we go. I'm not on this mic, I'm on this mic. Want to thank you all for coming here, and especially thank the Lieutenant Governor for her remarks. It's very rare to have elected officials who know what the social determinants of health are. So those of us in the research world, we know what that is, and I had a UW doctor once ask me, how do we write a prescription for better housing? So maybe that's a way to think about it. And I'm vamping while I'm waiting for my slides to load, because I'm not the Lieutenant Governor. And again, to remind you, if you have any questions, there we go. Click on the QR code, which is from Slido, and that'll take you to an online website. You can type your question in. You can upvote and downvote questions, and then I will moderate for our panelists. So we have a distinguished panel here, but I'm going to give just a few opening remarks. There we go. I'm going to start with my housing story, because everyone has a housing story, and much like the Lieutenant Governor, we can tell this story as a way to kind of connect with our community. So I grew up in a small house in Wausau, Wisconsin. It was an FHA-insured subdivision built in the 1940s. Most of the homes in our neighborhood were either 3-bed and 2-bath or 2-bed, 1-bath. We had a mixed income neighborhood. We had doctors and plumbers, working class and professional class. And this is the type of housing we built all over Wisconsin. If you've been to any city, Wausau, Green Bay, Janesville, Madison, Milwaukee, you've seen this. By the way, this product is illegal to build in most cities right now. We'll get back to that. But in high school, when my parents paid off the mortgage, as people do, they got the deed back from the bank. So I was a nerd in high school, and I read the deed. And I will never forget where I was and the feeling when I read those words, "This house shall not be sold to." And I'm not going to quote the rest because you know those words. I grew up in an FHA-insured subdivision, so it had a racially restrictive covenant, right? So at least in Wisconsin, white families like mine, sent all 6 kids to college, were able to accumulate wealth, but black families were not. So that's part of the complex history of our housing policy system. We'll talk later about the FHA style, which is a way that we did build affordable entry-level homeownership for working and middle-class folks across the country, but in a housing policy system that didn't work for everybody. And given that I just paid my taxes to the IRS, I earn enough income to itemize, which means I receive the largest housing subsidy the United States has, which is the mortgage interest deduction. And I receive down payment assistance from the biggest down payment assistance program in the United States. It's called the Bank of Mom and Dad, right? And so when we talk about home ownership, we're also talking about intergenerational wealth and how we have a system that works for some but not for all. All right, but you don't want to hear stories, you want to hear data charts, because everybody loves a data chart in the morning. I'm going to go very quickly just to set the stage. If you didn't know it, housing's really expensive in Dane County, right? And our adjusted for inflation, our housing prices have gone up 40 to 50% in the last 7 years. Right? And if you own a home, you've seen the value go up, but if you're trying to buy a home, you've seen the price go up, right? And so the median price is the median price. One of the causes, we're going to talk a lot about causes and solutions. We don't want to point fingers. It's not about assigning blame. It's about understanding structural determinants. It's 41% more expensive to build a single-family home. That also means that my house has gone up in 41% in value just in terms of replacement cost. And replacement costs for insurance as well, right? We have some insurance people in the world. So normally my house has gone up in value not because the structure has gone up in value, but because the land underneath it has gone up in value. But we're also facing the headwinds that it's just a lot more expensive to build anything. So sometimes people say, why is it so expensive to build? Well, it's land, it's lumber, it's labor, and it's lending. So all 4 of those 4 L's have gone up in price significantly in the last 4 years. So median house prices have increased 77%, median rents 62%. Raise your hand if your income has gone up 77%. I'm kidding, right? So this is the issue, is housing prices are far exceeding housing costs. So this is a little bit of a wonky line, but the orange line is how many housing units we used to build per 1,000 persons, single-family homes. We used to build a lot in Dane County. 5 to 6 per capita. At the time, the blue line is the ratio of the median price to the median income. That's a measure of affordability. You want this number to be below 3.3. We used to build a lot of housing, and housing in Madison and Dane County was affordable. Then we stopped building a lot of housing, and now housing is unaffordable. We're not trying to say that the only thing we need to do is build more housing. But if we don't build more housing, then all the other affordability things just become much more challenging, right? We'll talk a lot about solutions today. I think the biggest gap we have right now in Dane County is we just don't have any supply of attainable entry-level homeownership product. The smaller homes on the smaller lots, townhouses, condos, and co-ops. Okay, one of the things other driving this, blue is employment in Dane County, green is households. You can't have more households than housing units. We've consistently grown jobs faster than households. So we have over 100,000 people who commute into the county. Some of them would probably like to live here. Those of you who are employers know at some point in time, people are not going to drive 45 minutes for a $20 an hour job. The solution to Dane County's affordable housing has been Janesville, Sauk, Beaver Dam, right? Okay, this is a little wonky, but there's 2 components to house prices going up. Shelter inflation, that is the cost of the building, and the land inflation, which you see there on the blue line. One way to think about this is the average lot in Dane County. The value of the lot, meaning it entails the permission to build one home on it, in addition to infrastructure, has gone up $100,000 in real terms in the last 10 years. So we have significant headwinds in terms of land prices, and that is largely driven by zoning and municipal decisions, because if there's a 10,000 square foot minimum lot, I know I'm preaching now, but a 10,000 square foot minimum lot, you can build one house. If you made that a 3,500 square foot minimum lot, you could build 3 or more houses, right? So we have a shortage of the entry-level homeownership product. We have a shortage of the smaller homes, attached homes, duplexes, townhouses, and twins. Okay. If you're not yet asleep, there's coffee in the back, because now we're going to go to our panelists. And remind you to, again, scan those QR codes and submit questions. So we're going to go in order of appearance here, and I'll introduce the panelists, and then they're going to make some preliminary remarks, and then I'll ask questions, and we'll take questions online. So our first speaker is Elmer Moore, who is the CEO and Executive Director of the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, which is our state housing finance agency. And he is going to solve all of our problems for us.
No pressure there.
Oh, I got to go back. There you go.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I have tried to make it a habit to first acknowledge our elected friends. So good morning to our elected friends. Mayor, thank you so much. Any other elected friends in the room? Okay, LG. Oh, thank you so much for being here and joining this conversation. Next, I want to acknowledge some of my favorite people in the world. That is the WHEDA staff. And I'd like WHEDA past, present, and future staff to raise your hands right now. Great, I see past and present. Where's the future staff? Okay, just talk to me afterwards. I'm excited to be in this conversation, particularly because I'm in a room full of folks that agree. We are in a housing crisis. We are in an affordable housing crisis. And it's going to take this kind of collaboration and partnership to see our way out of it. I want you to bear with me. I woke up, I stayed in the hotel last night. I live in Milwaukee, and it just was going to be a little difficult for me to get here this morning on time if I went home. But I stayed in a hotel, and I woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had this idea. Some folks know that I love a metaphor, and I had an idea at 3 a.m. for a metaphor to describe this situation. This is the first time I'm saying it out loud. My staff is worried, and I'm going to ask for some grace as I try to make this make sense. So here's the idea. Who in this room has been to a pick-your-own apple orchard? Okay, great. I want you to imagine that our work is about that. I want you to imagine that housing, or houses, or housing units are apples. When you have an orchard, you cultivate the apple trees to have a certain shape so that you can more easily pick them. And typically, you want to grow them somewhat close together, and you want the fruit to bear as low as possible. And then there's some fruit that are going to be inaccessible, so you'll use a ladder. Well, as I think about it, Habitat are apple tree cultivators, trying to make the shape of the tree appropriate so that the most apples can grow at that accessible from the ground level. But there's always going to be those apples that we can't reach. WHEDA, in a lot of ways, is a ladder company. And we show up to help folks that need a boost, who need some resources, get to those apples that are further up. Here's the problem. Historically, we've done a great job growing apples close to the ground, but all those apples have been picked. The only ones left over are wormy, maybe even close to rotten. And we're forcing folks to choose those anyway. Our ladders, up to this point, have only gone so high. We know there's apples above our reach, and we know that it's not the fault of, yeah, I know. We know, Kurt's looking at his watch. It's not the fault of organizations like Habitat that there's always going to be apples that we can't reach from the ground and that WHEDA will not be able to make accessible. So the work we're doing together is making housing both affordable, putting those apples closer to the ground, and building more interesting, innovative ladders so that more people can reach what has historically been unavailable. This is an incredibly difficult time to do that for inflationary pressures, political pressures, social pressures, and so on and so forth. We're excited to be in this conversation with you. We're excited to stumble over some really fabulous good ideas. What I'm going to ask of you is to not know why we can't get it done. So I was supposed to talk about housing across the state, and this is all I have to say. It's terrible everywhere for people who don't make an extraordinary amount of money. That's a simple statement. The apples are rotten, the apples are wormy, and the nice apples are out of reach. Thank you, and I'm supposed to pass.
You've got 1 minute.
Oh, I've got one more?
You got 1 more minute if you want.
Oh, I've got 1 more minute. The only thing I'm going to add is
It's the yellow card, red card.
so we are here to be great partners of yours, and I'm really excited to tell you that my boss is in this fight. My boss is Governor Tony Evers. He shows up when we get to cut ribbons and we get to break ground, and he shows up for people to have housing that they can afford. I can prove that because he gave us $525 million to support that. 50 million of those dollars was, yes. 50 million of those dollars was to support people renovating homes that were wormy apples. It's been extraordinary to work with him and with working with all of you up to this point. Thanks.
Thank you, Elmer. And for the record,
I'm supposed to pass the clicker.
I like the metaphor.
Thank you. So, okay.
I like
All
the
right.
metaphor. I was waiting for the apple pie analogy, because the best use of apples is apple. Well, second best use.
Apple pie is generational wealth. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
I think that clicker goes to Gary.
And then, so let me introduce our
Okay.
second speaker. Gary Gorman is the chair of the board and directors and founder of Gorman and Company, which is an affordable housing developer that builds wonderful products all around the state of Wisconsin, in many of the Midwestern markets, and as he'll show you, in markets around the country as well. And so Gary has a wealth of experience. He has forgotten more about housing than most of us will ever learn.
So thank you. I love, can you hear me back there? I love Elmer's metaphor, and because we make a lot of apples. I'm hoping they're not rotten and wormy. But the status of what's going on in the federal government right now creates a lot of turbulence in that apple orchard. And to produce housing, you need to have some stable scenario, which we don't have right now. So I'm hoping that thunderstorm that's going through your apple orchard calms down at some point soon. Anyway, I don't know who this old bald guy is. My self-image is still long blonde hair, but we'll see what we can do. All right, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are. This is what we do. We've been in business 41 years. We have 750 employees. That's never anything to brag about. We've done 174 projects, 14,206, hopefully not wormy apples. Most of them were, LIHTC means low income housing tax credit. Thank you, Elmer, for allocating credits to our firm so we can do that. Total development costs is somewhere north of $3 billion. So this is where we are. We're in 12 states. The green ones we haven't built in yet, but our folks are working at it. So we've seen a lot of different communities deal with affordable housing. So here's what I want to talk about initially. Part of the challenge is the public improvements that the developer is now asked to pay for and is incorporated in the cost of a single family home. So I asked our construction guys, break it down for me. So at one point in time, communities built the public infrastructure. They built the roads, they built the sidewalks and so on. At some point, somebody said, you know, let's make the developer do that. And then let's make the developer pay for the extending the utilities, and let's make the developer contribute to parks and so on. That's all well and good, but newsflash, the developer's not paying for it. The home buyer's paying for it because the developer doesn't have any choice but to pass on that cost to the home buyer. So what does that reflect? So the items here on the screen that are highlighted in yellow essentially are public improvements that in many cases the developer has to deed over to the community after it's built. And I would argue that these numbers are actually low because you have to add on the financing cost of financing the road and so on in the time that you're working on the infrastructure before you even get to the house. So in this instance, $82,000 and change of the cost of a $407,000 house is essentially public improvements. That's about 20% of the cost of the house. It's not the only reason why housing is expensive, but it's one of them that a lot of people don't recognize, and I wanted to point that out. So we're supposed to talk about solutions here today. So I want to describe to you a proposal that our firm has made to a community that I'm not going to name, but it's in Dane County. And we thought that if we did a public-private partnership where the community essentially paid for the public improvements, whether it's through TIF or some other mechanism, and helped people with the down payment. You know, not everybody's got the bank of mom and dad. I'm painfully familiar with that bank, but not everybody's got that. So big obstacle is the down payment. If you want to avoid having to pay private mortgage insurance, no offense to the insurance people, but you have to have 20% down. A $400,000 house, that's $80,000. So that's a big obstacle for people. You know, because when you think about, somebody was telling me before, my kids can't pay $1,500 or $2,000 a month rent and save up $80,000 to buy a house. That's a tough nut to crack. So what we're trying to accomplish is, because this is an experiment, we're willing to donate our time and not charge a developer fee or profit, so just to see if it works. And the idea is we're going to target trying to produce housing, single-family homes for $300,000. And what we're hoping is that if we can take out the public improvement costs, we can take out the developer compensation, and we can build an affordable home, we can make that work. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to accomplish. I got 1 minute. All right. I was asked to talk about what we've done in Milwaukee. We built 422 homes on the north side of Milwaukee, which is a tougher part of Milwaukee. How did we do it? We got tax credits, thank you, Elmer, and we brought in investor capital to create a down payment for the homes we built. We built them in typically 40 houses at a time, and then after 15 years, when the investors have received all their tax credits, we sell the home to the resident for the debt. So here's this is just a before and after picture. Some of them were, and these were homes that were owned by the city of Milwaukee through property tax foreclosure, interim foreclosure. So here's how it worked. We used the 9% credit. The investors got credits for 10 years. The lots were $1 from the city of Milwaukee. It was a rent-to-own concept, and so the buyers paid far less than the appraised value. So I know I'm supposed to stop, but we have people that have went from living in subsidized housing to being homeowners, and that is a huge sociological lift for those folks, and it helps stabilize the neighborhood. And the big difference is people say, where I stay versus my home. And if you're in those neighborhoods, you ask somebody where they live, you hear, I stay at X. When it's their home, they say it's my home. Thank you. Yeah, the big one does.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Gary. And just to kind of add on, in kind of real estate finance, economics, we talk about that the kind of rule of thumb is that for the cost of a house to develop and build it, about 20% should be the land and the infrastructure, because 60% is the construction cost, and then 20% is everything else. Financing charges, overhead, brokers' fees, profit, soft costs of engineering and architecture. But in Dane County, because our lots are so expensive, 40 to 50% of the cost of a house is the land itself. So this is a creative solution in Milwaukee where you already have existing housing, right? And you really wormy apples, to use Elmer's metaphor, and you need to fix them up. So our third presenter is Julia Arata-Fratta, who is the mayor of the city of Fitchburg, and we have to get a shout out. We have some good Fitchburg staff in the room. So Mayor?
Okay. Okay.
There you go.
So, good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. I am the mayor of the city of Fitchburg. This is my second year as a mayor, and one of my priorities for 2025 is housing. We have a housing crisis, in Fitchburg too. The prices of home have increased drastically. A little bit about Fitchburg, we are 35,000 people, but in the last 10 years, our population grew 35%. So you can imagine that growth, how has impacted the housing stock in the city. So I firmly believe that in order to help to alleviate the crisis that we have in Dane County, in this municipality like Fitchburg, we should also be part of the solution. I believe that we need to have some skin in the game. So when I say that, what does it mean? That I want to tell you what are the things that we can do at the municipal level and what are the things that Fitchburg is trying to do in this year and next year. So we have a couple of housing initiatives that we are working on, and one of the things that in 2019, we created our first housing plan. We are trying to revise the housing plan because some of the, we need to determine what are the new goals that the city is moving forward, and some of that information is already outdated, So we are planning to do that. We are send the RFP this month, and the idea is to have a new revised plan by the end of the year. So we also, we closed 2 successful tax incremental districts in the last 2 years. We decided to keep those districts open for additional year to create an increment, to use that increment to create an affordable housing fund. For the first time in the history of the city. So we have a $10 million sitting in that fund. And some of the potential programs that we are exploring and we're trying to do is rental rehabilitation that we are already working with efficiency navigation program with Sustain Dane and Elevate Energy. That one is an initiative we're currently working. The other is we are trying to explore workforce unit in market rate apartment. And to do that, we are also considering providing TIF, tax incremental financing, to the developers, down payment assistance, deferred loan payment for low-income housing. We already did we're working on our first deferred low income with a developer that is currently here. So that one is they are working on building 24 workforce housing townhomes in the city of Fitchburg. They needed a gap. We determined to create this deferred loan payment for them. Land banking is something that I am pushing very hard to have land banking, and the idea is to be proactive in the case that we find a site in the city of Fitchburg where we can acquire, and then we can work with a developer to build something. So we are looking at infill ownership and redevelopment site. The other thing that we are very active is to work in a partnership, in public and private, to build workforce housing. We are exploring that opportunity. Something that I am pushing to this summer is we are planning to revise our comprehensive plan, our zoning code. Our zoning code has never been revised in more than 50 years. It's very strict, stringent. But in the meantime, because I don't have patience, so people that know me and work with me, they know that. I am pushing very hard this summer to start working on some minor changes to our zoning code. So we're working on a couple of that. One of the things is to reduce the lot size, because I was amazed when I was reviewing that our minimum lot size is 7,200 square feet, and this is insane. I mentioned the revision of the plan. We are also finishing 2 neighborhood plans right now. That one is going to open more land for development in the 10 and 20 years. And the other thing that I was very intentional, because I believe that we need to do something about housing, is in my 2024, I hired the first housing specialist staff member that is here, Laureen. So that one was, we have our first housing specialist. So we are focused on housing. So we need to have, I think we need to lead with our work too. You know what I mean? So what else? I have 1 minute. Okay. So what are the barriers that we are encountering? And is the cost of the land, that everyone mentioned that. It's very expensive to acquire a lot in Fitchburg. It's more than $150,000 for an average lot. Sometimes we have a lot of nice infill sites, but the landlords, they don't want to sell, or they are asking an insane amount of money for those lots. And we don't have control on that. We don't have any control. A slow pace of the new home construction You know, after the recession, Fitchburg, for 10 years, we're building around 50 homes per year, you know, single family. We should be building 140 on average. Last year in 2024, we built only 100, so we are way below. And that one had created why the supply, you know, decreased and our home prices increases. So we have insufficient, we don't have also developers that approach out and say, we want to build workforce housing. Most of the developers that come to Fitchburg, they want to build, you know, very expensive neighborhood or multifamily. So we also need to, if someone approaches us, we need to be intentional and work with them. As I mentioned, we have our outdated zoning code and NIMBY all the way, I want to say. We had to fight everything that we bring a new project to the city. It doesn't matter, it's workforce housing, multifamily, or a very expensive neighborhood. Neighbor come to our plan commission meeting, to our council to complain why. So there is something that we need to, I don't know how to, you know, to be honest, how to work with that type of, you know, group of people that they're constantly against development. So that's it for now.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can just highlight something you said, I think is key for us to understand. If a housing lot in Fitchburg costs $150,000, you can't build a $300,000 total house on that, right? There's no way you can make the project work, right? So it's really exciting to see all the creative partnerships, because not only do we have to bring down the land costs, but if the infrastructure costs on a larger parcel, you have to extend roads, water, sewer over a much longer distance, and you can only amortize over fewer units.
I also believe that we shouldn't be building this big neighborhood where you have a home in a half an acre lot. Those times are gone, you know what I mean?
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
So our fourth speaker is Michael Ward, who is the Senior Vice President of Business and Community Development at the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Michael?
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. I think I'll start first with why am I here? I think it would not be 5 years ago, and certainly 10 years ago, it would have been unusual to have someone from the Economic Development Corporation talking about housing. We really focused on jobs, and then after that, jobs, and then after that, jobs. And that's really changed dramatically, especially in the last 5 years. And I will say, you know, it's a very conscious choice on the part of the Economic Development Corporation to have community and business in the same division. Everything we do is really oriented around helping the communities, and that includes the very large projects that often are business related and make the newspaper, and, you know, obviously needs thousands in some cases of jobs. So I would say, from my perspective, the world that I live in, that housing becomes a part of, is the first. You know, we're working very hard to bring companies to Wisconsin, oftentimes in a target industry, certainly still to create jobs. And, you know, the good news, I guess, in a bad way, is that they're very aware of the need for housing because they're aware of the need for workforce. And that's really where I enter it, is workforce, and specifically lack of workforce. And what that tells me is that this isn't just a Wisconsin problem, this is a United States problem. They're very aware of the fact that they're having trouble finding workforce no matter where they're looking to locate. And they're aware that housing is, you know, one, if not the biggest constraint to that. So the good news is that we're able to have intelligent conversations with these people when they come to the state and want to look to locate here. The other big place, and honestly where I see it much more tied to home ownership versus just housing, I would say that first group isn't really aware of the type of housing. They just want workforce, and they know there's housing needs. When you have companies that are here in Wisconsin, they are hearing it from their employees. They are dealing with some of the commuter issues that you talked about, Kurt. And so they're much more focused on home ownership in addition to housing. And they have workforce needs as well. And we're really concerned about those because those companies are already here, and we want them to stay here. We want them to expand here. And again, the good news is that not only do they understand the need for housing, they understand the need for home ownership. And I would just say that they are very engaged in our communities and with our government officials. At least that's been my experience the last 3 to 5 years. So also good news there that, again, in a bad way, it's a big enough problem, they recognize it and they've engaged with it. And then finally, community is the other part of what I do. And again, for a long time, what WEDC did with community-related projects was to take, primarily it was real estate focused, not necessarily housing, real estate that was never going to get picked up by the private sector because it had brownfield issues, it had obsolescence, it had something else, historic preservation issues. And so we were really working with communities, and we still do to this day, to say, tell us what property would have a catalytic effect on your community's development if we could get it to the state where the private sector would willingly pick it up. And I would say in the last 5 years, over 130 of those projects are now housing related, because that's what the mayors and the economic development officials are telling us is this, this would be a great infill site, but it has this issue. And so we've got a series of grant programs that aren't intended to be housing programs, but have been captured and become housing programs because of that. And I would say that's almost tripled over the last 3 years. So in terms of barriers, I think the three previous speakers have really covered it. It's speed to market, it's costs, and some of the tools, and maybe the thing that hasn't brought up, I would say, especially for my world, we've tried very quickly to add housing-related, reduced matches or other things to our programs. There's more work to be done there on some of the tools as well. And then for solutions, I really mentioned, it's many solutions, it's not one solution, it's a lot of collaboration, and everyone has to be at the table, and I would include the business community in that. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you. And a reminder, in the room and online, you can scan the QR code. It takes you to Slido. You can ask questions. I've seen a lot of questions come in and various upvoting, so we'll make sure to get to those questions. And I just want to say, Michael, it's really exciting in the housing world to see the economic development world and employers getting involved in this business, because they know that a home is where a job goes to sleep at night. And if you're trying to bring people in for jobs and there's no housing, it's hard. So maybe I'm going to get in trouble, but I would always ask the media now, whenever we do a ribbon cutting for a job, we're going to have 500 jobs here or 1,000 jobs there, the media should ask the local elected officials, where are those workers going to live, right? Because we want local officials like in Fitchburg to say, if I'm going to get 500 new jobs, I need 325 new homes for those workers. So, and our final speaker is Naira Jordan, who is the Associate Vice President of Community and Social Impact right here at our favorite insurance company. Can I say that? American Family Insurance.
Prove it's your favorite by singing the jingle. That's how we know you're that part. There you go. Nicely done. Nicely done.
Health and life. I'm
There
like,
you go.
oh, they don't do healthcare anymore, right?
Nicely done. Now, insure carefully, dream fearlessly. So we got to bring it home that way. Thank you for having me here. I'm Naira Jordan, Associate VP of Community and Social Impact with American Family Insurance. I got to shout out my peeps at the table over here that are representing AmFam. Thank you all for being here. Make some noise. Y'all just looking at me? In this role, I also get to lead our Dreams Foundation. And so for 95 years, American Family Insurance has been in communities, and we've stood at this intersection of protecting our customers' dreams and partnering with our employees, our policyholders, and community members to expand opportunity. In 2027, we will turn 100. And so as we approach this milestone in the next 100 years, we want to make sure that we continue to do good for our people, for our customers, and for our communities. And so from this perspective of insurance, because as you all heard, I lead the foundation. I am not an insurance adjuster. I am not an actuary. I lead the foundation. But from that perspective of insurance, we know that access to affordable housing also includes an understanding of awareness of risk. And any type of housing now requires homeowners and residents to have an understanding of emergency planning. And homeowners are now expected to be proactive in their approach to risk protection. And so through our involvement and investment in the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, we actively seek innovative solutions to expand home resilience, particularly in the affordable housing space. Now, from the lens of our corporate foundation, which is where I'm going to spend my time speaking today, the lack of affordable housing represents or presents several challenges, which you've already heard from this panel. And I think someone already said, we rely on experts and partners to support the work that we want to do and to help us understand from that perspective of community impact where we need to show up and how our involvement will support communities. So from the foundation, we are seeing a surge in requests for funding from nonprofits and community organizations that are working to address issues around affordable housing. We also understand that addressing affordable housing requires this multifaceted solutions involving policy advocacy, as we've heard about, construction of new housing, and support services for residents. It's challenging to identify for us and to fund initiatives that effectively address all aspects of this problem. It can also be difficult to measure the long-term impact of investments in affordable housing projects. Unlike more straightforward initiatives, the success of housing projects may depend on various external factors, such as local government policies as well as economic conditions. We also know that tackling affordable housing also requires collaboration, as we've talked about, with multiple stakeholders, including government and nonprofits and private developers and private corporations. As a foundation, we encounter challenges in coordinating efforts and ensuring that all partners are aligned in their goals and their strategies. Ensuring the sustainability of affordable housing projects can also be challenging. We may be called on to provide ongoing support or find ways to create self-sustaining models that don't rely on continuous funding. So how do we make these projects more self-sustaining? In some cases, communities may resist the development of affordable housing due to concerns about property values, increased traffic, or changes in neighborhood demographics. And so we're well aware of the stigma that's associated when we hear the term affordable housing, of what that conjures up in the minds of some. And so we must engage community in outreach and education to address these concerns and build support for housing initiatives. We also have multiple focus areas within our foundation. So we tackle food insecurity, we tackle workforce development, transportation. So balancing the allocation of resources between affordable housing and other priorities can create its own challenges, especially when all of these areas are critical to community well-being. And we also understand that there's these other factors that also contribute to the issue of affordable housing and stable housing, because we've talked about some of the systemic challenges that exist. So navigating the complex landscape of housing policies and regulations can be difficult for us as a foundation. They may require advocacy efforts in order to influence policy and support affordable housing, but we also know that this requires expertise and sustained effort. So these challenges and the ones that we've already presented, that were presented from the panelists before me, have been highlighted, just illustrate this complexity of what we're talking about when we talk about housing. It requires strategic planning, it requires effective partnerships, and it requires a long-term commitment to creating sustainable solutions. And so I'm excited to be a part of this conversation because it's my hope to gain some understanding and also potentially identify how we may need to think differently as a foundation as we engage with different entities, as we engage with communities and get the voice of community to help inform where we need to show up and how we need to think about solving this crisis. So thank you.
Thank you. I prompted the panelists with questions I was going to ask, but I see one online from Tiffany Malone, and when Tiffany Malone asks a question, you have to answer it, right? So this will be for anyone who wants to take a stab at this. Housing affordability is essential, and how can we creatively assist families that are slightly above the qualifying range for quote-unquote affordable homes, considering that most affordable homes are government funded and some families are just a few dollars away from qualifying? I think Elmer has to answer this first.
Oh, come
It's that,
Yeah.
it's that
Yeah,
middle band on the rung of the
So
ladder.
I actually really like this question because words matter a lot, right? Is it about the affordability of the home, or is it about the resources available for that family? So WHEDA, by statute, is obligated to focus on families that are 140% AMI and below. It's painful when a family is 145% AMI. And what we don't want them to do is orchestrate or sort of navigate around that by somebody taking leave from their job or something like that. So what do we do for those families that are just outside of eligibility? I don't know. I don't know. And I offer that happily because I want to reposition us as just as good at listening and asking a question as knowing the answer. I wish that was a more common problem. I wish it was the case that there were families that were just a little bit too wealthy to afford a home, or the homes were just a little bit out of access for their pricing issues. The reality is they are wildly unaffordable, and families are really, really far from income limits to make the housing available affordable to them. So I don't know.
Just my 2 cents worth. What I hear from folks is that huge obstacle is the down payment.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that various levels of government can come up with down payment assistance programs, I think that's a huge obstacle breaker if that's possible.
Great. And we could also say, well, we'll ask Elmer, but 140% of area median income is quite different in Madison, where it would be about $150,000 for a household income, versus rural areas or in central cities, right? And so we also have this challenge, which is, now, if someone makes $150,000 in Dane County and you think, well, they shouldn't be experiencing housing challenges, that's how bad it's gotten, is that the challenges keep climbing up the ladder of the income scale. And as Elmer can speak for hours, it looks a lot different in the rural and urban areas of our state, depending upon the price of housing in the market. So speaking of which, this might be a question for Julia or Elmer. What is being done to encourage development of affordable townhomes and condos and or conversion of rental apartments to condos? So we said the C word, condos.
Yeah, so can I start with, I like Gary's answer better, so I wish my answer was Gary's answer.
Is this about apples?
Yeah, it's always about apples. But Mayor, I defer to you to answer this one first. What is
Okay,
being done?
so one of the things that we are doing in the city of Fitchburg now is we need to change the zoning code, because right now we cannot do that. We have a lot of barriers to do that. So this is what is important. One of the priorities to revise the zoning code to allow even to accessory dwelling units. This is something that also we are exploring when we revise our housing plan, is how we can incorporate that as another housing option. But I think we need to, this is what is important to do those revision and change and start changing those zoning code, because it's the only way that we can be able to, to have that type of housing stock.
So the requirements of product coming from WHEDA, where we are the administrator of federal resources, state resources, and so on, is extraordinarily complex. And there are statutory or sort of policy requirements and issues that make development of things like condos incredibly difficult. All of it really well intended, I'm choosing to believe, to protect the issuer of the resources like a WHEDA, and also the recipient of the resources like a borrower, or for that matter, a developer, contractor, and so on. One of the things that we have to do is find those places where the intention and the application are slightly mismatched. An example is, as Gary mentioned, in Metcalf Park, there's a slow transition of LIHTC rental units into home ownership opportunities. Sounds easy, right? Oh, get to the end of the compliance period and we're just going to transition. Those residents are going to want to become owners. Oh my God, so hard. There's so many things we could have done better, including telling the residents 5 years ago, hey, in 5 years, you're going to have an opportunity to become a homeowner. What might they have done different to prepare themselves? We could have spent 5 years preparing their credit worthiness. We could have spent many, many years preparing the rest of the community to support new homeowners and so on and so forth. So the answer to how do we accommodate these innovations is to be innovative and to make ourselves more accessible and really get ahead of the problems.
I have to jump in here.
Yes.
Because Elmer hit the biggest obstacle on the head in terms of us converting the 422 rental homes on the north side of Milwaukee into homeowners. It's the credit rating of the potential buyer. We got Northwestern Mutual Life, sir, that's a competitor. They're willing to provide financing to these individuals, but their credit rating is poor. And Elmer, I will take responsibility for our firm not going to those residents 5 years ago and say, let's work on your credit rating so that when you have the opportunity to buy the house, your credit rating is at a point where you can close.
We'll share the responsibility.
Well, and I think that illustrates a key point that we also have to add to the conversation, which is home buyer education. Because not only do we need to produce home buyer eligible units for people to purchase, we need purchase ready borrowers. And of course, if you get a WHEDA loan, you require home buyer education, counseling, down payment assistance. But this is something where employers, financial institutions can really help in terms of helping people repair their credit, build their credit scores, and be purchase-ready borrowers. So,
I'm going to be quiet, I promise.
No.
I just want to be careful about one thing.
Yes.
We actively support homebuyer education, but I always want to be thoughtful. This is not the fault of the folks that have been disenfranchised. Homebuyer education is a resource that we make available, and we want to make attractive to the folks that take advantage of it. So that's the first point. The second point is, I'm really excited, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this out loud, but we've been piloting a program, thanks to the generous support of a foundation, called WHEDA Home. Am I allowed to talk about this? I'm gonna do it anyway, I'm the boss. So we've got some money where we are piloting mortgages to folks that have credit disqualifying events that will make mortgages available to them. And we've got two things that we've got to prove. One, that a credit disqualifying event does not make you a bad borrower. That's number one. And I could say a lot about that in Fair Housing Month. The second thing I want to say is we have to prove to the market that these borrowers could make a phenomenal investment as we securitize those mortgages. So it really takes participating and innovating in all parts of the system. This is a systems issue for us to make even small progress. All right, I'm going to be quiet now.
So we accept,
No, and I think that's-
we accept 400 and some applications for your pilot program?
Sadly, we are not yet fully funded in that program, but we are really excited to accept new partners supporting this work. Hey, Naira.
To a question we had online, which relates to this, one of the roles of Habitat and organizations like Tiffany's is not just the homebuyer education counseling, but the coaching and providing financial assistance so that people who are formerly excluded from the market can be brought into the market and have the opportunity for home ownership. So we're gonna jump to the far side of the panel here.
Yeah,
so for both Michael and Naira, can you give us some more specific examples of what you've seen of employers or corporations or foundations and how they can really be productive and helpful in this space? Or alternatively, Michael, if you want to tell us examples where we had a potential employer wanted to relocate with jobs, but they didn't because we didn't have housing. Sure. Naira, you want to go
Sure,
first?
I'm happy to talk a little bit about this. I think for us, it's important to note that, we try to, partner with organizations, as I said earlier, who are these subject matter experts. I would be remiss if I didn't speak about our partnership with Habitat for Humanity across the country, where we've engaged our agents and our employees. So we work in over 30 communities across our 19-state footprint to engage our employees. So in 2016, we hosted a Habitat frame-up at our headquarters on the far east side, and had nearly 100 employees show up, and we've seen those numbers annually to support Habitat families. In 2022, we piloted a partnership with our Minnesota sales leaders that engaged over 200 agents and customers. And after seeing success, we've collaborated with Habitat in Minnesota to expand that and launch a national partnership to further address the affordable housing issue. In 23, we solidified a partnership with Habitat International to increase our reach across the country with those bills, and then we've expanded to do even more within that space. And so in all of our locations, In almost every community, we've engaged our agents, our employees, and our customers to talk with Habitat, but also to connect with Habitat families. I think some other things as to some of the conversations that have taken place so far that we've done, and I do have notes because I will forget all of these partnerships that we have. There's an organization in Phoenix, Arizona called Home Inc., and Home is HOM Inc., and they contract with nonprofits and public agencies to administer assistance and housing program support and other permanent housing programs for vulnerable families that are experiencing homelessness and housing instability, but they provide that wraparound support that others have talked about, that financial coaching, that those resources that they need. In addition, in the Milwaukee area with Axe Housing, supporting financial literacy, financial coaching, lending, real estate services. And then Community Development Alliance, we talked about the importance of down payments. I know for my mother buying her first home, that was the challenge that she had, and just getting the dollars for that initial down payment. She's been in the same house for, oh my goodness, I won't say my age, but we moved there when I was 7, and my mother, who's 93, is still in that house that she purchased on her own working at a factory. And so that down payment support was so important for her. And then we partner with Ohio State University and their Power of Home program that gives access to any homeowner in the state of Ohio for repairs, renovations in their home. They're first-time buyers that are understanding what they need and the resources they need to navigate home ownership. And so that program helps support them in that journey. And so I have a whole bunch of pages where I could go on, but I think that just illustrates how we think about affordable housing, how we think about the support that's needed, not just within our organization. The best way that we're able to scale is to engage our agents and our employees throughout the country to identify these partnerships and to help support the communities that are closer to them. So I hope I answered the question.
Oh, that does, and that's tremendous reach and impact all across the country, so. Michael?
Yeah, I think I said earlier, I think the good news is, for a bad problem is the companies have awareness and the companies are willing to collaborate. I think the last step is companies also need to provide funding. And I think that's the piece that I'm seeing happening fairly recently, and in a good way. I would maybe throw out a few examples. Sheboygan County has a number of very tenured corporate firms that have been there for generations, and they have invested in a fund, and that fund is actually building subdivisions. I mean, so that's an example of companies going from awareness to collaboration to taking action with dollars, and that's a fairly significant program. Jefferson County is approaching it more, trying to help the developer with low or no cost financing, and so they've created a fund. Their fund is really coming from community foundations, the healthcare system, government. So again, a lot of collaboration. Washington County is doing the down payment assistance, raising funds from their community to do that. So everyone's approaching it differently, but I think from my perspective, the good news is in the last 12 months, not only is there a lot of collaboration, but there's now dollars flowing into some of these ideas, and that often cases is really necessary to make them work. So those are just 3 examples where I've seen all stood up in the last year maybe with corporate and foundation dollars both happening. So a lot of very interesting ideas, and there's even some more innovative ones out there that aren't as far along. I mean, you've got groups experimenting with actually becoming the producer themselves, looking at modular homes or dealerships and things like that. So I think there's more to come, but like I said, the good news is we're way past awareness and we're way past collaboration, and I think these projects are starting to get off the ground now.
And of course, we have to mention the Dane Workforce Housing Fund, invested in by many major employers in Dane County. So a lot of creative, if there's a theme, I'm hearing creative partnerships, public sector, private sector, finance agencies, developers, economic development, businesses, community foundations. So we have a lot of questions online, but I'm going to ask Gary, as a builder and developer, what's something about your business that most people, particularly NIMBYs or local governments, do not understand, that you wish you could explain to them?
Well, we're not the devil incarnate. That's probably the first thing. The mayor and I were talking about how Just saying the word developer in some neighborhood groups, raises people's temperature. And, all the housing that all of us live in, somebody developed it. I think probably I wish people could see the work that goes into a project, whether it's rental or single family, before construction starts. What I always say to our folks is, once construction starts, that's like seeing the tip of the iceberg. All the work that's done prior to that, it's in collaboration with a community, it's working with finance folks, it's working with the investors. All of those pieces have to come together. And when I hear our folks complain about the complexity of a process, I always say that's a barrier to entry, and you want to be in a business with barriers to entry, but sometimes the barriers really drive out folks that otherwise would be reasonable producers of housing. So that's probably the message that I'd want to send.
Yeah, all of us live in homes, but probably none of us actually built those homes ourselves. So,
You dealt with the devil at some point.
right. I mean, at some point in time,
No, you're not the devil.
You're a profit-motivated business, and that's a good thing. We need investment, we need capital, and if you can't generate a return building housing, then the capital will go somewhere else. And we have a huge housing shortage. So,
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead,
about,
Mayor.
You mentioned something about all the before a house start being built, all the behind-the-scene process. And one of the things is all the permits and, that they have to go through a municipality. What we're trying to do at the city of Fitchburg, we implemented like 2 years ago, was to have a development team. So we invite the developer with all the development meeting where the developer is have a meeting with everyone that's going to make the decision in that, from the inspection, planning, public works, economic development. So, so this is another way that we have streamlined the process internally. So to accelerate some of the, all the permits that we need to, the municipality have to go through with a developer. So we try to streamline that process internally, and it's, and it's working. So because we understand that sometimes time is very costly for developers, because if we, right now, if a developer is delayed for a couple of months with the tariff, with what happened with the federal level, we don't know that. Interest rate, you know what I mean? So a couple of 6 more months, how that are going to affect the cost of that development. So yeah. So
as a mayor and a leader on this issue, what have you learned, or how can we all think about kind of educating and moving our community to yes, to wanting more housing, right? Okay. Because it's not the only barrier, but it's often a significant barrier.
Yeah, one of the biggest barriers that we right now have is people say, why we don't want you guys to build more homes here in Fitchburg? Why we don't build those homes in other municipalities? Okay? But the question is, we are, the city of Fitchburg is in a very, strategically located in Dane County, that people want to move there. We always say we are between Epic and downtown at the university. So I think it's education, and I think we need to do a better job as a community to educate people. We try to have data, and we are getting some of the data from the Dane County Regional Plan that was put together last year. Thank you, Olivia, for your leadership. So we said, a plan was developed for the region, and we need to follow this number. We need to build around 490 units in Fitchburg to at least to be,
keep up with population.
Keep up, you know what I mean? So we need to show the data. We also need to show them that, the workforce housing is not a bad thing, because we need to put a face. Who are those people? Are they our teacher, our police officer, our firefighter? Those are the people that they need the housing, because sometimes they have that stigma, and the workforce housing is like, Also, remove the stigma that workforce housing, if we incorporate that in our community, that it makes our community more vibrant, because you want to be the work is close to the place where they work. You want your retain the family. You want your kid to stay in the same community. And this is another thing: is what is going to happen with our kid? Mm-hmm. Like 20 years ago, in order to buy a house, it was 3 times your annual salary. Now that number is 6, 7, 8 times. Mm-hmm. So I looked out at my kid and I say, how is my kid are going to be able to afford a house in the next 10 years? So I think we need to show them who are those people that they need the houses and how they are going to make our community more vibrant, and to remove all the stigma. Because low income doesn't mean because it's going to bring crime.
Yeah. I bought my first house when I was 26. Now the median age of first-time homebuyers is 38,
Yeah,
right? And eventually, if you don't provide housing opportunities for your workers,
exactly.
some other region is going to
And how we
poach
are going to bring more, employers to our municipality or region if we don't have the housing?
Right. So we are close to ending time, so I'm just going to ask each panelist, is there something you want to say that wasn't asked, or a final message you have for us?
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry?
So what I'll say is we're getting really good at listening. We are getting much better at trying things that may or may not work. So things like, we just concluded something called the Rural Workforce Housing Pilot, which was led by my colleague Rebecca over there. And we crafted relationships with 3 different communities, all with distinct problems, all identifying themselves as rural communities. And ideas that have made us historically very uncomfortable rose out of that. Things like land trusts. And we accepted that when someone comes up with a brilliant idea, like a land trust being a solution for their community, they're going to look to WHEDA to be a resource and a partner. And we looked it straight back in the face and we said, okay, we're going to work to try to figure something out. We don't have a solution yet, but we're not going to shy away from engaging in those conversations and trying to foster innovation from it. So we're listening. We're excited for you to bring us hard problems. We're excited for you to bring us really novel ideas that you're seeing around the state, around the country. We've got to make progress. Last thing I want to say very quickly. The issue of inaccessibility of housing is not just a housing problem, right? It is an everything problem. I say this all the time in every place I go. One of the slow progressions we're seeing is others owning the problem. The fact that WDC is here is a great indication. We could have healthcare, we could have DPI, we could have everyone who sits around the table at cabinet meetings, just as I sat yesterday, and say, your number 1 problem or your number 2 problem is actually housing. We need to continue getting better at that. We need to accept that everyone's got a responsibility and everyone will benefit when we make progress at solving the housing crisis. Thank you.
My closing comment is, to solve hard problems, the private sector and the public sector have to work together. And the mistrust that often exists needs to be dissipated. There needs to be initiative by the private sector to sit down with the public sector at various levels and say, how do we work together to solve this? That would help.
Brilliant.
I agree with you 100%. I think we need to, for the Dane County housing crisis, we need to work together, all the municipality with Dane County leading, and be all on the table with the, with the different agencies and share and have a shared message. Because right now it's like every municipality is trying to do something very isolated, and I think we need to work together with the Chamber of Commerce, with our local business association, and and all the municipality together here in Dane County to determine, okay, how we can work all together with a shared message. So it's not a Fitchburg program, it's a region problem.
Yes. Thank you.
I would say just think of, at least for my organization, economic development, we are very willing and active in what we call technical assistance. And what I mean by that is when we dig into housing, we often find, the organization or the community we're dealing with is like, well, I don't know grant writing, or I don't know, the rules. And so, we are very willing to help fund, pre-development or even, economic development core needs that are really obstacles to, housing, childcare, and many other issues. So, we want to be part of the conversation, and we recognize that we call it, capacity building needs to happen in the system, sometimes to even be ready to address the problem. So, and we're happy and and look forward to partnering with the people to do that.
Naira?
Yeah, I would say we're also excited about the innovation that can happen. So how do we explore what can be? And so I know that there's an accelerator with Starting Block Madison, funded with a match by WEDC to look at what housing, how do we expand and explore that accessibility, affordability, but also the manufacturing around those homes. So excited for what's to come around all of this.
Excellent. So we're going to invite back Hillary, but as she comes, let's thank our panelists.
Wow, I could not be more proud to be in Dane County and caring about housing than I am right now. Thank you all for your knowledge, your passion, your fire. We appreciate that so much. So I want to give them one more round of applause, but before we do, I want you to stay and chat. You've got some of the best minds on housing here in this room. So if you have a little bit of extra time, stay and mingle. Let's connect, okay? And then secondly, Habitat would be remiss if we didn't say you are always welcome to come and volunteer, to come and learn more about housing, to come even advocate for us, whether that's at the local or the federal level. We need some federal advocates right now. And of course, you're welcome to donate, right, Gabi? Always welcome to donate. So one more round of applause for our panelists, and thank you for coming.